Paul Harvey, who was born Paul Harvey Orant, was born on September the 4th, 1918, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Paul demonstrated an interest in radio from a very young age. At age 14, he began working at KVOO Radio in Tulsa, and he progressed very quickly into voice work. He moved to Chicago, Illinois, where he began his broadcasting career with WENR Radio. His radio segment, The Rest of the Story, began a part of his newscast and later became a standalone series, hugely popular until his death. He sadly passed away on the 28th of February 2009 in Phoenix, Arizona, in the United States. Now, what makes this recording even more incredible is that it was recorded in 1965.
If I were the devil, if I were the devil, if I were the prince of darkness, I'd want to engulf the whole world in darkness, and I'd have a third of its real estate and 4/5 of its population, but I wouldn't be happy until I had seized the ripest apple on the tree, thee. So I'd set about, however necessary, to take over the United States. I'd subvert the churches first. I'd begin with a campaign of whispers. With the wisdom of a serpent, I would whisper to you as I whispered to Eve, do as you please. To the young, I would whisper that the Bible is a myth. I would convince them that man created God instead of the other way around. I would confide that what's bad is good and what's good is square. And the old I would teach to pray after me, Our Father, which art in Washington. And then I'd get organized. I'd educate authors in how to make lurid literature exciting so that anything else would appear dull and uninteresting. I'd threaten TV with dirtier movies, and vice versa. I'd peddle narcotics to whom I could. I'd sell alcohol to ladies and gentlemen of distinction. I'd tranquilize the rest with pills. If I were the devil, I'd soon have families at war with themselves, churches at war with themselves, and nations at war with themselves, until each in its turn was consumed. And with promises of higher ratings, I'd have mesmerizing media fanning the flames. If I were the devil, I would encourage schools to refine young intellects, but neglect to discipline emotions. Just let those run wild. Until before you knew it, you'd have to have drug-sniffing dogs and metal detectors at every schoolhouse door. Within a decade, I'd have prisons overflowing. I'd have judges promoting pornography. Soon I could evict God from the courthouse, then from the schoolhouse, and then from the houses of Congress. And in his own churches I would substitute psychology for religion and deify science. I would lure priests and pastors into misusing boys and girls and church money. If I were the devil, I'd make the symbol of Easter an egg and the symbol of Christmas a bottle. If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who wanted until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious. And what'll you bet? I couldn't get whole states to promote gambling as the way to get rich. I would caution against extremes in hard work, in patriotism, in moral conduct. I would convince the young that marriage is old-fashioned, that swinging is more fun, that what you see on TV is the way to be. And thus I could undress you in public, and I could lure you into bed with diseases for which there is no cure. In other words, if I were the devil, I'd just keep right on doing what he's doing.
The devil's been trying to do the same thing for a very long time. But one thing he fears is when somebody gets saved. So he transforms himself into an angel of light, and he sends out his false prophets, his false ministers, who have been transformed into ministers of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their works. And he gets them to pervert the gospel, to preach Christ, but a false Christ, one who isn't really Elohim in the flesh, one who didn't really die, his blood wasn't really shed for the remission of all sin, just some sins. A Christ who people have to put their faith in, but they also have to do some extra things themselves to get saved. They have to have their own righteousness. And that is how the devil confuses people. He makes people think that grace is not enough. People have to have grace plus works, grace plus obedience. Now, of course, it is good to be obedient. We should be walking as Christ walked. But let's be realistic. Nobody is walking as perfectly as Christ walked. So family, here is the true gospel. Jesus Christ, Yahushua HaMashiach, he died for you. His blood was shed, and he rose on the third day. If you believe in him, you shall not perish, but have everlasting life. For you are saved by grace, through faith, and not of yourselves, not of works. It is the gift of God, so nobody can boast. The false prophets, Satan, they have pride. They want to boast in themselves. Get as far away from them as possible. Because what they will do is they will try to emotionally manipulate you by bringing up the most grievous sins and saying, can somebody have done this sin and get saved? Can somebody do that sin and be saved? They are emotionally manipulating you. And what they will do is they will accuse the true brethren, me and my brothers and sisters in Christ, of causing people to sin, the same way that the false prophets accused Paul the Apostle. Take a look at this verse in Romans 3:8 onwards. And why not say, let us do evil that good may come, as we are slanderously reported, and as some affirm that we say, their condemnation is just. And that is exactly what the false prophets, what the modern day Pharisees do to us today. Exactly what they did to the apostles. They accuse us of preaching to do evil because we are preaching grace. This is exactly what they did to Paul. You see, as we are slanderously reported, as some affirm that we say. If you go and look online, family, everybody who is preaching the true gospel gets slandered of preaching a license to sin. You should actually rejoice when people accuse you of this. The Pharisees, they will bring up the most grievous sins. They'll say, oh, so you can do this sin and be saved? You can do that sin and be saved? Making it sound as if we're telling people to do those sins. We are not telling people to go out and sin. We are simply telling you how powerful the love of the Most High is. That we are now saved by grace through faith. And we should do good now that we are saved. But because they are darkness and they do not comprehend the light, they do not comprehend the love of the Most High, they will slander us and say that we are telling people to do wicked things. But that is not what we are doing. The Most High, He is the judge. His word is true. And He said that we are saved by grace through faith. There is none righteous, no, not one. So stand in the word of truth, stand in Christ. If you put your faith in anything else but Christ, you're condemned already. For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whoever believes in Him shall not perish, but have everlasting life.